I'm Andrew Nesky, and this is Science in the Outer Streams. For untold millennium, human beings have sought to discover the reality of an afterlife. Today, we will investigate this question from the perspective of a religion known as spiritualism, a religious system that holds as one of its key tenets that communication with the dead is a scientifically proven fact, and that the existence and personal identity of the individual continue after the change called death. While the National Spiritualist Association of Churches lists member churches throughout the United States, the largest member of this association is actually a town, Lilydale, New York. Lilydale is a members-only community, a community of spiritualists and mediums. Since its beginning in 1879, such notables as Mahatma Gandhi, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, and Franklin Delano Roosevelt have walked the streets and avenues of Lilydale, seeking the advice and counsel of one or more of its resident spiritualists. Our guest is the Reverend Sherry Lee Calkins, a fifth-generation resident of Lilydale and a past director of the Lilydale Assembly. A certified medium, Reverend Calkins is especially well known for her work with angels. She has been teaching enlightenment and spiritual growth for more than 19 years. Thank you so much for making the long drive from Lilydale. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
As usual, when we start these things with our guests, there's so much to cover. But what I'd like to get started with is some sense. I mean, this is certainly, a fifth-generation medium, or fifth-generation spiritualists. So you were born into a spiritualist church? Is that how it works?
I was born into a spiritualist family. In fact, two of them. My mother and father met on the beach in Lilydale when they were 25.
I see.
And they were there during the summer, most of their lives. Lilydale is a summer resort activity, basically through the latter part of June, July, and August. And that's when the families would get together for the boating and the swimming on the lakes, because Lilydale is on the Cassadaga Lakes.
Oh, I see.
All right.
Beautiful country.
It is beautiful country. Yes, that's right. But my great-great-great-grandparents were spiritualists and came together and built houses there and lived in them. And I've just been associated with Lilydale through both sides of my family. 5 generations on my father's side, 4 on my mother's side.
So your great-grandparents actually built houses in Lilydale? I see.
Yeah.
Do you live in that house now? I'm curious.
No, I don't, as a matter of fact. I live in a house that was built in 1894 by an astrologer.
My goodness. So how do you think that it's different to be brought up in an atmosphere like you were brought up? I mean, is it different from, say, someone who had a conventional religious upbringing, do you think? Or
not really. My parents were not much on religion. They were big on swimming, I have to say. My grandparents held the seances, although when my mother and father were younger and my dad lived in Lilydale and went to school there through 8th grade, they took part in seances and those activities. But as adults, no, they were busy raising a family. And we lived probably 55 miles from Lilydale, so we didn't go to church there. I actually went to Bible school at a Wesleyan Methodist camp, and my mother attended a Methodist church, and I went to Baptist church with my friends when I was young.
So this is not incompatible with Christianity, obviously.
I have to say to you that spiritualism, to me, is a Protestant religion.
That's interesting.
Different from other Protestant religions, in that we do not adhere to the salvationist principle, but we do very firmly believe in the life and teachings of Jesus the Master.
Salvation principle, you mean, for instance, that you must believe in Jesus Christ to find the kingdom of heaven? Is that
No, I do believe in Jesus Christ. He personified the kingdom of heaven, but I don't believe in vicarious atonement. I think I make my own happiness or unhappiness as I obey or disobey nature's physical and spiritual laws.
So you would take issue with, for instance, absolution, things of that nature?
Yes, I do.
That's fascinating. And so your family would hold seances, and these seances, were they seances done on behalf of other people? Were they seances that for information that your family wanted for some specific reason, or how did that work?
It's pretty much like going to a prayer meeting. It is a religious observance. And they would pray before, meditate, no smoking in the room, no alcohol, and very seriously get together to communicate with people they loved and knew loved them, and for answers to troubling questions as you go into prayer. But we expect that the answer to prayer is going to be immediate and at hand very often through the presence of loved ones who've learned to go beyond physical limitations.
I see. So, I mean, we were talking about this before the show started, and the idea that communication with the dead is a scientifically proven fact. How would you, I mean, a scientist might look at that statement and say, my God, what are they talking about? No one's ever conclusively spoken with the dead. How do you couch that? How do you explain that?
How do I explain that? Well, with my own experience, I have seen people, as I'm looking at you, that I know are dead, and they talk to me. When my mother died, I was not a practicing spiritualist. She died in 1969. 3 weeks after she died, I got a telephone call from her best friend who was the school nurse. My mother was a third-grade school teacher who had a debilitating illness, and she never told us. It weakened her to the point that when she had pneumonia, the heart, the lungs were so weak, it killed her within 10 days. So the school nurse, who was her best friend, put her in the hospital one morning when she tried to go to school. She never came out. Now, this lady was a practicing Catholic and not into religion, and nor was my mother as such. But 3 weeks after my mother died, I got a telephone call from this lady, whose name was Roberta. And she was crying. She said, Sherry, I'm having an awful time. She won't let me do it. You're going to have to come here. Now, she lived in Corey, Pennsylvania, and I was in Lilydale, New York. And I knew it had something to do with my mother. So I got in my car and brought my sister, and we drove to Roberta's house. And she's sitting there at the dining room table in tears with a picture of my mother as third-grade teacher that had been taken for the October, Halloween festival. My mother had a little pair of kitten ears and mustache drawn and a little tail over her arm. Roberta wanted to give this to us, and she sat down to write us a letter. Now, Roberta was a nurse. Her handwriting wasn't much better than a doctor's. My mother taught handwriting. She had beautiful hand. And Roberta's sitting there going, look at this. And she placed a pencil between her ring finger and her little finger upside down. And she's not even looking at the paper. And the pencil started to write.